Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I'll be doing my thoughts, my breakdown, whatever you want to call it, on week 26 of the 2020 season of the Overwatch League. It's the final week for qualifying matches for the Countdown Cup, so let's throw up my spreadsheet real quickly and then let's jump into it. As you can see, 2-0 on big picks this week, 9-2 overall. I feel a little bad about picking the Nyxl Dragons game as a big pick because I felt like I knew how it was going to go. There was a game like Fuel Rain where I didn't really necessarily know how it was going to go. But it was a good game, so we'll talk about that one here in a little bit. Let's real quickly run down the matches that I'm not going to break down in depth, just real quickly. Fusion beat the Fuel 3-0. Very one-sided series for the Fusion. Very good look for the Fusion. Fusion are looking pretty good once again going into the Countdown Cup. The Fuel, without Decay, I still have a lot of questions. Saturday, the Guangzhou Charge beat the Seoul Dynasty. Expected. Charge looking better again after their loss to New York last week. They come back and have a good win against the Dynasty this week. Skip these two Asia matches. I'll talk about those a little bit later. Paris Eternal beat the Washington Justice, but most notably, they beat the Washington Justice 3-1, which meant that they could not guarantee themselves the #1 seed. Purely on their own, they had to hope that the San Francisco Shock would lose a map to the Houston Outlaws. But the Eternals still looking very good and still looking prepared and looking like one of the best teams going into the Countdown Cup. The Toronto Defiant with a win over the Vancouver Titans. Decent series that one was. The Toronto Defiant walk away with the win, put themselves actually in the top 4 going into the Countdown Cup, which for them is pretty good based on where they had been. Or sorry, not top 4, the top 8. They are not in the bottom 4 though, but the top 4 of the ones that picked on Sunday is what I meant to say. So putting themselves in a pretty good position going into the Countdown Cup for a team who has been somewhat up and down. They've been looking a lot better as of late, and they are a team who I think could potentially make another decent run, but we will see what happens with them. The final game in North America for Saturday was the San Francisco Shock 3-0ing the Houston Outlaws, taking the #1 spot in the Countdown Cup for North America. The Outlaws actually looked pretty good for a team that was playing against the Shock. The Outlaws, with Raucus now retired, they put up a fight. They almost could have. I don't want to say they almost took a map, but they were a team who very clearly showed that they were not just like a really weak team. They looked pretty good in that series, and they looked pretty good in their series against the Valiant, which I'll talk about in a second here. But this is a good look for the Outlaws against a very good Shock team. So not a huge disappointment in my books from them. Moving on to Sunday, we're going to skip over the Fuel Rain game for a second. Talk about Gladiators Mayhem, a 3-1 win for the Mayhem. Gladiators didn't look too bad. They actually pushed the Mayhem a bit, but the Mayhem ultimately were able to come away with the win. Yaki, too strong. And that's really all there is to it. Mayhem still a very good team, still one of the top teams in North America. They are the #4 seed going into the Countdown Cup. Final match of the weekend was the Philadelphia Fusion taking on the LA Valiant. It was a clean 3-0 sweep for the Philadelphia Fusion. That locks them up for the #3 spot in the Countdown Cup. Good look from them. I expect the Fusion to be contenders going into the tournament. They will likely have to play Paris in the semifinals, depending on what happens. I would expect Philadelphia to be a semifinalist team, so we won't see another Paris-Philadelphia finals match, but we might see that match in the semifinals, which is intriguing. So those are the matches I wanted to cover real quickly. Let's kick that spreadsheet out of there. Get out of here. And let's talk about some of these matches that I want to talk about more specifically, starting with the LA Valiant taking on the Houston Outlaws. A very, very, very close match. This one went down to the wire with the LA Valiant taking the win. It was a very good look, though, from both teams. I picked this one as a big pick because I thought that this series was one that had a lot of promise and a lot of potential. Houston Outlaws were, in my opinion, playing to their best. The meta was going to suit them the best. The ability to play Orisa, the ability to play Widowmaker, the ability to play Ana. Those are types of things where I felt that it really benefited Houston Outlaws, and it did. Rappel looked incredible in the series. He was consistently putting up huge moments in this series, and even the one against San Francisco. Rappel was really, really good. In this series, though, unfortunately, Houston was not able to come up with the win. The Valiant, after not playing for 2 weeks, struggled a bit on some of the maps, Gibraltar and Kings Row specifically, but they looked good on Control, especially, and they also looked good on Volskaya. So it was a good game for this Valiant team. KSF played very, very well, which is something that you hope to see from this team when KSF had been one of the more struggling pieces of this team. In recent matches, when they were playing the Genji compositions, they didn't look as strong as teams like Florida, teams like even Houston, when they were running Blase Genji. There were some weird compositions that Houston was running, like they would run Nyxl on the Genji. I don't remember if that was this series or the series against San Francisco, but I think it was this one, where they were running Nyxl on Genji, and they were doing weird stuff like that. I don't really know why necessarily, but it worked at times. But they seemed to really want to stick to Dante Nyxl as their DPS duo. It seems like that's who they're the most confident in. And if they can run Tracer Genji with those two in, they want to do it. So it's an interesting look for this team. But it was a good series. KSF, my boy, came up big in the end. The KSF hype train is rolling ahead. Full steam. More energy than it's ever had. Just trucking forward on these tracks. And it was a very good win for the Valiant. They needed a win against a team who were around them to kind of keep them afloat and keep them level. And this was a win that was good for them. So good for the Valiant getting a big win against a good Houston Outlaws team. Moving on, let's talk about the Hangzhou Spark 3-0 sweeping the London Spitfire. Very, very, very good win for the Hangzhou Spark. The Hangzhou Spark are a team that needed that strong win. They've been very up and down. The London Spitfire are a team who have been relatively consistent. They've had a couple problems, and one of those problems was evident again in this series, but I want to talk about the Spark first before I talk about the London Spitfire. The Spark have, like I said, been very up and down. They've been very inconsistent. But you know that this is a roster that has a ton of potential and a ton of talent, right? They have QOQ in the flex tank position, paired with Architect now in the DPS, and you still have Godsby, you have Gushui. They have some of the best players in the league at their positions. Now, we've seen that IDK has lost a bit of his motivation for the game, but he's, trying to get back and rebuild himself mentally and get back into the game more. So you have that unfortunate reality when it comes to the Hangzhou Spark. But this is a team that are really good, and they have a lot of talent and potential on this roster. This is a roster that last year was the 4th best team in the league. One of the main problems we've seen from the Spark, and it's something that we saw from them in the past, and it's something we see from them now, was they were a team that struggled to adapt. And I don't know if that was because of their head coach, Mask, who is now no longer with this team, as Pajian has now become the head coach for the Hangzhou Spark, formerly the head coach of the Vancouver Titans. So I don't know if it was Mask was a slow coach to adapt, but the fact that Pajian is now the head coach for this team says a lot. And I think that was something that I kind of saw coming. I knew the Spark had gotten rid of, was it Yeah, I think was their coach. And then they brought in Pajian, and I was like, okay, that seems to me like a move to bring Pajian up to be the head coach of this team. And now he is the head coach of a very good Spark team. So I'm intrigued and interested to see how this team does going forward now with Pajian as their head coach, or Pajian, I don't really know how you pronounce it. It's Pajian. But this is a Spark team that I'm very, very intrigued by, because I think they're, like I said, they're very good. They have, in my opinion, top 2 main tank in the league with Gushui. I think QOQ has been really good. One of the top rookie flex tanks that we've seen recently. Obviously, he doesn't have he's not the caliber of Krong or what's his name? I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, he's not the caliber of Krong, but he's a very good flex tank regardless. With London, the thing that I wanted to talk about was that we have seen a very, 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 very major problem with London, and we've seen it again this week. London is way too scared when they play against teams that are better than them. London's a scared team when they feel like they are in a losing situation. And it was very evident on Route 66, where they just didn't defend Route 66 point B. They just didn't defend it. Like, the Spark were just able to roll through the map because the Spitfire lost one player, and they were unwilling to fight. And this is a problem that we had, or that we saw with London when they took on the Shanghai Dragons, like back in May or June. I don't remember exactly when it was. I think it was back in May. No, it was back in June. It was back in June. Yes. So it was a problem that they had then, where they played against Shanghai and they just looked too scared. They weren't willing to take fights. They were on King's Row and they wouldn't leave like the hotel. And Shanghai just capped A for free because London just didn't have the strength. I don't even know how to describe it. They didn't have the willpower to go onto the point and fight because they were just too slow and they were too scared and they played scared. And when you play scared against the team, you're going to get beaten. And it's a big problem that London has. And it's not a surprising problem, right? London is a ton of rookie players in a very tough region. You are a team that is just trying to figure out what to do. And I don't know if it's that this team doesn't have a strong in-game leader. I imagine that somebody on that team is a very good leader. I don't know who. I don't know enough about these players to know who is kind of their shot caller, strong in-game leader. But I think that they need a leadership figure who is more determined and willing to kind of take these risks and get the team to do something, and that is able to make quick decisions, because it seems like they just struggle to make decisions in moments like that, and I think that's a huge problem for this team. I don't know what the cause is and who is the person who shot calls for this team. I have no idea. I genuinely have no idea. But I want to see more from this London team, because I think this London team is very talented. I think if this London team were in North America, they would be around the 4 or 5 spot. I think they're a similar team in terms of players to the Florida Mayhem. So I would love to see this London Spitfire team succeed, because I think there's a lot of really great players in this team, a lot of really young rookie players who have excelled and looked incredible this season. But the way that they played against the Spark and the way they played against the Dragons in the past shows me that this team lacks a strong leadership figure, or at least one who is willing to kind of make these risky plays. They play too safe. They play too passively. And it's a problem that we've seen. You can't play that way anymore. You know, like London was one of those teams back in 2018 that played very aggressively, and they've switched over to playing passively, which is what New York did for so long. And it worked in 2018 and hasn't worked ever since. So it's something that London has to change and fix. And who knows, maybe that's the Pavon touch right there, playing a little passive. You know, Pavon was like, oh, well, this will work. But I would like to see what the Spitfire can do, because I think they're a very good team. But it was a good one for the Spark, getting a 3-0 win over a very, very, very good, a good Spitfire team. Let's move on to the NYXL versus Shanghai Dragons game. This series did go the way that I expected. It went the way of the Shanghai Dragons, but it was a big pick game, and I wanted to talk about it because I actually thought New York looked very good in this series. Now, I don't think they looked like they were ever going to really beat Shanghai. Maybe here and there you had a moment of maybe being like, okay, yeah, they could maybe win this series. They won one map. They won Route 66, a map they've never lost this season, which Shanghai had also never lost this season until they lost to New York. And I think that's a huge thing of note. New York has maps that they're very good on, and it's good to see that even when they play those maps against arguably the best team in the league, in the Shanghai Dragons, it's good to see that when New York goes on that map, they have strategies and they're comfortable enough on that map to win and look pretty good on that map. They looked pretty dominant on that one particular map. And obviously people are going to blame, well, Shanghai had Stand 1 in, they didn't have Fearless, but I don't think that really means anything, especially because Fearless's Orisa has been his weakest hero by far, and Stand 1's Orisa has arguably been his best hero. Maybe the in-game leadership is a little bit different, maybe the shot calling structure is different when Stand 1 is in versus when Fearless is in, but I think regardless, and no matter how you look at it, this is still a team that has, in that moment, 4 players who are dominating. You still had Fleta, you still had Lip, you still had Lee Jae-gon, you still had Void. So maybe Fearless not being in had some level of impact on it, but Fearless still looked very good. Or, sorry, Stead 1 still looked very good, and it was still a very good composition that they tried. But New York just looked more comfortable. They looked like they knew what they were doing more. And New York did some weird things in the series. They started the series with Libero in, and he was playing Hitscan. He was playing like McCree and Widow, and it didn't really work. I love Libero. That's not his role. That's not where he should be for this team. If you're gonna run some type of Hangzhou Libero composition, like it needs to be double projectile, really. Like you could even run Genji Tracer with those 2 in, but if you're gonna run Genji Tracer, it's better to run Nene or even SPP. But Nene, I think right now would be the better option. Yeah, it just didn't really make a lot of sense. Wolf and Achilleos were kind of theorizing that they were trying to run Mei Genji compositions, I think. But even then, if you're running Mei Genji, why would you run... or it wasn't Mei Genji. Sombra Genji, that's what it was. They were theorizing Sombra Genji. But if you're going to run Sombra Genji, why would you run Libero unless you're running Libero and Sombra? If you're running Hangzhou and Sombra, why would you run Libero Genji when you have Who Are You on the bench? It didn't really make a lot of sense. I don't really know what that move was. My guess is they were trying something. They were trying to see if they could make something work. It didn't really work. That was really the only map where I felt like New York kind of got rolled. Even though one of the points on Busan, they actually looked very good. On Busan Mecha Base, it was a very close series. A very close map. They put Nene in after that, and then the series was very, very close. That gives me hope for New York. Bianca still looked pretty good. Obviously didn't look as dominant as he did against Guangzhou last week, but still a very good look from the team with Bianca in. I still like Bianca. I think Bianca is the future for this team. I think he is their best option going forward at main tank, or flex tank, sorry. Because I think that Bianca just has a lot more understanding of how to play around the team than what Hoppa has. I think Bianca has shown more... he's shown better peel, and he has, I think, mechanically, we saw him play some Sigma in this series, as well as, of course, some Zarya. I just think he looks better on those heroes in terms of supporting. He's not making those big plays that Hoppa would always try to make. You know, Hoppa always had, like, the bombs when he was playing D.Va, and those are good plays, and they can really help your team, but it was, I think, really, really, really Bianca's performances that really helped New York kind of get more consistency in their play in the past couple of weeks. And I'm really interested to see what they do in the Countdown Cup. They're on the tough side of the bracket. It's a very tough side of the bracket. They're with Shanghai and Guangzhou. Like, it's a really tough bracket for them. But we'll talk more about that when I make my bracket predictions later this week. This was a good series, though, from New York. But Shanghai, still a very good team. And I think this was Shanghai proving themselves still as the team to beat in Asia. Final match I want to talk about, final match of the week, is the Dallas Fuel taking on the Atlanta Reign. The Reign won this one 3-1. Officially, it's over now. It's dead. Ending the curse that Atlanta can't win a match if they don't win all 3 maps. They've done it twice now. The first time wasn't a fluke. The curse is lifted. The Atlanta Reign are looking kind of scary right now. Once again, though, the Dallas Fuel did not play Decay. It was once again an Oni God series the whole way through. The only map that the Atlanta Reign lost, it should be noted, was when they subbed in Saucy and Iris, their new flex support player coming out of NA contenders from Third Impact. So Tayo and Iris both making their way into the Overwatch League. That was the only map that they lost. They subbed those 2 in. So can you blame them for that loss on that map? Maybe, you know, they're bringing in 2 players who maybe don't have the synergy yet with the rest of their team. I think Iris is really, really good, and I think long-term, Iris will be their starting flex support. No hate on Dogman. I think Iris is just that good. And I think this is a team that you look at Iris and you're like, this guy is a really good flex support who has shown himself time and time again in NA contenders. Obviously, he was on Third Impact. Third Impact got second in NA contenders. So, a really good player in Iris that this team picks up. Saucy, also a very, very good player as well, that has now joined to their DPS side. But these are 2 players who need time to adjust to the league, time to get integrated into this team before I think that they really kind of show their true potential, but that's something I expect to happen in the not too distant future, because I think those are 2 very talented players. The Reign winning, though, huge for them. I thought that Doha was even playing very well for the Fuel at times, but I actually thought the tank line for Atlanta looked very good today. Or not today, this weekend. I don't even know why I said today. I'm recording this Monday. Anyway, I thought that Hawk played very well. That Hawk looked really good, and he was really shutting down Doha a lot. And I thought that was one of the biggest things that they had going for them was they actually had big plays from positions that I think have been struggling recently, where they haven't been getting those big performances. So it was good to see that from them, because it was a huge, huge, huge win for a team who have been recently kind of up and down. But to me, this is a really good win for Atlanta because it keeps them up, keeps them winning. They're now 10-7. They have a +3 record. They have 3 more wins than they do losses. They have a +14 differential. That's still one of the top differentials in the league. They're 10-7. Their differential is better than the differential that the Charge have. It's 1 worse than what the Mayhem have. 2 worse than what the Eternal have. Like, this is an Atlanta team that is genuinely scary. They are a very good team, the Atlanta Reign. They are a team that you look at and you say, if they have everything together, like if they're focused and they're motivated, this is a really scary team. And I think that this is the Atlanta Reign proving once again that they're a team that when it gets to late in the season, when it gets to the point where they need to be focused and motivated, they get the job done. And the Atlanta Reign, I think, are looking to be the best they have been in a long time. So I would say look out for this Reign team. They are the 5 seed, I believe, going into the Countdown Cup. They might be one of the teams to look out for as a potential upset team. You know, I don't think, if they play against San Francisco or Philadelphia or Paris, they probably don't win. But if they play against the Florida Mayhem, there's a good chance that this Atlanta Reign team can pull out a win. So keep your eye out for them. Real quickly on Dallas, I just want to say that Onigan is a good player. Onigan looks very good, but he's still not as good as Decay. And when you're a team that is struggling as much as the Fuel have, I just wonder why you don't play Decay more. Hopefully we'll see more and we see more of him. I just don't really understand it. I understand wanting to work Onigan in, and Onigan has been very, very good. But Decay is the backbone of this team, and they really need Decay to perform at a high level. That, though, is everything I have for you today. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. Comment down below your thoughts on this past weekend. And also, Countdown Cup videos will be coming out later this week, so be on the lookout for those. But that is everything I have for you. Thank you so much. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.